Hi everyone, my name is Greg and welcome to Seniors Count. On today's show, we believe as usual that you are the foundation on which Boston was built. So our goal is to connect you to resources, benefits, and information to enrich your life. So thank you for joining us. And right now I'm with Beth Treffeisen. She's a journalist with the New Boston Post. And we're talking about her recent series of articles on the value of life. So honoring the lives of Boston senior citizens. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So I wanted to start, Beth, by asking, so do you remember the first time you've used the word, I'm a journalist, in a sentence, or thought about it in that way? Thought of yourself as a journalist?
Sure, that was probably my freshman year at Emerson College. I was studying journalism, and I remember my first class was go out and get people to talk on camera. And so I had to go out onto the streets of the Boston Common and ask people, and I told them I'm a journalist from Emerson College, and I think that's when it first hit me.
How did you feel saying that, like as a student, kind of going out and doing that?
I was very nervous.
Yeah.
I've definitely overcame a lot of insecurities just getting myself out there and being able to talk to strangers.
Because it seems like, in a way, like a journalist, it's all about asking questions and all about being confident and approaching people you don't know, right?
Absolutely. That is definitely a big part of the job.
How do you specifically define, we talk about we see journalists all the time in the news and, we're reading the newspaper, but really do we think about, well, what does a journalist do? What does that job entail?
Sure. So I think of being a journalist as a lot of things. A, I'm a reporter. I go out, I research, and I find stories that maybe other news organizations aren't covering. And B, I then go out and I talk to these people, and I get to meet all these people I wouldn't normally get to meet in an everyday basis. And it's very interesting learning new things and then putting that down on paper or in this instance online. And getting all the factors and telling other people's stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because so you right now are a journalist for the New Boston Post, which is an online, so an internet-based newspaper. There's no print, there's no circulation around Boston. It's purely online. So can you tell me about the New Boston Post? It's a brand new paper. So.
Yeah, sure. So we launched in August, and ever since we've been growing. We focus on politics and the news happening here in Boston, and we try to cover the stories that no one else here in Boston is covering.
Wow, so really, especially, this idea of value of life. I mean, covering stories of senior citizens, the value of a life, and, people who are ignored in society. I mean, that seems like a perfect project for New Boston Post. So what was your way into that theme? That was November's theme, 2015, so value of life. What was your way into that story?
So it all started when I was talking with my publisher about what I wanted to cover for that month. And I decided to look into the seniors here in Boston because you don't typically get to hear about them in the everyday news. And I started looking, I went on the City of Boston's website.
Okay. Yes.
Looked online, I was like, oh my gosh, there's all of these programs here in Boston for seniors that you never would have thought were happening.
Yes.
So that's how I delved into that subject.
So you covered a variety of topics. So there was a recent Mayor Walsh's 50th anniversary celebration for couples who are married 50 years or more. The Friendship Works Pet Pals program, Tech Goes Home with Carl and Arnetta Beatty, a memory cafe in Waltham. So can you walk me through some of your favorite pieces and what they were about for you?
Sure. So the most recent one was the 50th anniversary. I saw the press release and was like, I absolutely have to attend. I thought it was so great to have these people come. They're all dressed up. They're all super happy to have this day to themselves, basically. Even though they're coming and they're meeting with other people, it's really all about the relationship they've had for all those years.
That's true.
I can never imagine being in a relationship myself for that long. And I thought it was amazing that they've been able to work through all of the problems and all of the issues and still to be so happy together. It was really amazing to see.
That's great. Talk to me about the Memory Cafe. It's one that we don't really hear about very often.
Sure. So I heard about the Memory Cafe and I thought it was a very interesting concept. to have people who do have memory loss issues come together and pretend that that's not a thing of their life. They have fun activities, you don't have to worry about it, and they're just there to be part of a community, both for them and their caretakers to connect and come together and build this community that is slowly growing because people are living longer and longer.
It's true. And then also, it was very interesting, highlighting the Tech Goes Home program. As I mentioned, Carl and our Netta Beatty giving tech classes and online social media classes, email classes to senior citizens. So especially as an online newspaper, that was kind of interesting. You maybe get some more people interacting with your website. But what was that story like for you, experiencing that?
So it was very fun to meet both of them, and also, it was very interesting because I'm always helping my parents, I'm always helping older people to get online, and I think it's a very useful resource for many people to be able to just, look things up on Google. If you don't have access to that, you're missing out on a ton of information, and I think those classes are very key to many people here in Boston because many resources are just solely online. So
right, and it can be sort of daunting to think, oh, an online newspaper, oh, I'm not connected in that way. But again, thinking about just staying up to date in your own community, especially a newspaper like New Boston Post, really focusing on stories of Boston that may get missed in a larger newspaper. So especially if you're more community centered or neighborhood, you're connected to your neighborhood. So that was great. And then also, I mean, the Elderly Commission is very connected with the Friendship Works nonprofit. So tell me about Pet Pals. It's a great program. What was your experience like with Pet Pals?
Sure. So what they do is volunteers go to senior homes and they bring their pets with them.
Wow.
And it's very great. I mean, I get excited when I see a dog. I'm sure other people get excited when they see a dog.
Yes.
So I think it's a great program. It's very easy for both the volunteers to and the people there to interact. And for many of them, the dog was the way into starting a conversation and building those relationships they had there.
It is, yeah. And so, just kind of reflecting on this experience of November, I mean, a month of Thanksgiving, obviously, but in this theme of value of life, I mean, how did you define it, or was it deepened for you after the experience of writing all of these articles? What did you experience?
Sure. So when I first delved into the topic, I didn't really know what exactly it meant to me. But now that I've gone and I've talked to all of these seniors in our community, I really realized that there is value in remembering and going back through history and, talking to these people who normally, especially with our younger generation, don't get that information out to. So I think it's important to really look to who your elders are, because I'm sure they've always helped you in your life at some point, and remember that, they have a lot of stories to tell.
They absolutely do, yeah. And I mean, has it changed you personally? I mean, or allowed you to think about aging in your own life? I mean, in talking to some of these people?
I mean, it has a little bit. I mean, I think I'm still quite young
Yeah.
in the scheme of things. And I think what it has opened up to is like, wow, I have a lot of experience ahead of me to come.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's powerful. That's powerful. Yeah, that's something that I have learned as well, and getting to know a lot of seniors in Boston, and specifically through the Elderly Commission. So our memoir writing initiative, which you approached me and asked to do a video feature on, which was very interesting because, I mean, the memoir project is over 200 stories of older adults in the city of Boston, published in 4 volumes, 1 volume coming out in 2016. We see those stories written, but you were able to do video kind of off-the-cuff discussions with some of the writers. So we're going to go to a clip in a moment, but what was that experience for you?
I had a lot of fun
Yes.
going out and meeting all of these wonderful people who live either here in the city of Boston or grew up here in the city of Boston. And now that I have only lived here a little over 4 years, but to be able to hear firsthand the history of what has happened here in Boston has been very interesting and very intriguing.
Let's go to a clip to the New Boston Post video on the memoir project.
I grew up for most of my first 13 years in the Old Colony Housing Project in South Boston, and it was pretty. You know, it was a development for low-income families, what we called back then poor families. The rent was very low; it was something like $4 per room, and we had 3 rooms at first, and then expanded into 4 rooms when I got a little older. Growing up in the projects, it was interesting. I had a lot of good friends. I had fun. The beach was right across the park. But when I reached about 12 years old, through no choice of my own, I got involved with a gang, the gang that ran the projects, basically, ran the kids in the projects. They were called the Mustangs. And I wasn't a member of them, and this created a problem, and I started getting into a lot of fights. And toward around the time that I was turning 13, the fights turned pretty dangerous. The other side came armed, and my parents decided that it was time to move out of the projects. And we moved to 89 Train Street in Dorchester. It's a street that is midway between Fields Corner and Neponset Circle. And it was a wonderful change in life.
What I can remember of what I saw in Mission Hill was the language. When I first arrived the next morning, there was some people singing some songs to me, because it was a different language. All I could hear was the sounds, not know what they were saying. So, in Tremont Street then, the housing development was across the street, and it was in this rear. And basically, it was not a safe place to go out at night or anytime. You always have to your safety was one of the #1 issues to survive on the street. That's how I see it now, but not then, just to be scared of. And unfortunately, my family is composed. My grandmother was an African, and my father was a Spaniel descendant. So I will hear people, the only thing I can, which is sad right now for me, is I could hear was the black people are doing this, and you can't be on the streets, and you can't hang out on Dudley Street, what is now, it was not what it was in the 70s.
In the year 68, I picked up 2 of my brothers in Birmingham and brought them to Boston also, so we got a chance to stay with my mother's youngest brother. And something happened with him and his wife. We decided to, he left us in the house alone. So my mother had 3 boys here. Even though she had a sister here, we didn't stay with her because she had no room for us. So since my brother and I had, that summer, my brother Bernard and myself, we both had jobs. He worked at the VA hospital in Boston. So we saved our money, sent money to Birmingham for our mother, and she brought the whole family here. And that's how we ended up in Boston.
I first came to Boston almost 20 years ago, and I liked it because, you know, you could do things. The area that we're in now was not the place to be, and nobody wanted to be here. When Alicia graduated from Wheaton, I thought, I'm out of here, enough's enough. And I said, is anybody coming back? And Alicia said, and I said, okay, then I'm leaving. So, I mean, they were aghast. What do you mean you're leaving? And I said, I'm out of here. So I sold my home, and I loved it. It was the dearest place I've ever lived. And I decided I would go to Boston. And I did. And I started a whole life in Boston, and it is the best thing that I've ever done.
I think one of the places that influenced my growing up was Savin Hill, another part of Dorchester. My grandmother lived on Saxon Street, and since both my parents worked when I was much younger, I'd spend the summer days over at her house, and this is when I was 8, 9, 10, right in that area there, and had a group of friends over there that we played a lot of street games, stickball, and we by accident almost set the entire neighborhood on fire one time. We devised these little shooters that were made from an empty wooden thread spool, and we would tape elastics around them, and back then kitchen matches, the wooden matches, didn't have any kind of a protective coating and would light on fire as they fell to the ground, and we would shoot these things at each other, and mostly they would go up at our feet. But one day we were shooting into a backyard. There was a section of Saxton Street in Dorchester called the Brick Block, and in the backyard there was a wooden fence that ran the length of the block, and people put all their trash out there, and we were shooting the matches, and it just so happened that the trash along the wooden fence caught fire, and then the wooden fence caught fire, and we were scared stiff because the porches and stairways at the back of the brick buildings were all made of wood. So we did what probably any 10 or 11-year-old kids did. We ran and hid and waited for the fire engines to come. I don't think anybody ever found out that we did it, but we were very fortunate, and I guess so were the people who lived in the brick buildings.
I shop without knowing it in the most expensive places in Boston and downtown Boston, and not knowing any politics about it. So, and I was always quiet, and getting in, it was no problem. Getting out, finding the famous exit that I didn't know was an exit, and how to follow an exit. I would visit all the businesses along Washington Street, Filings, Gilcreeks. There was another one. It was one, IG Fox. I bought myself a lamb coat with a hood and lamb on the bottom for $39. And I never knew. When my daughter studied fashion and merchandising, when she saw a picture, she said, "Where is this coat? I can show it to the class." She didn't insist. I didn't know what I had on, what I was wearing.
A lot of development and changes. When I first came to Boston, the tallest building in Boston was the John Hancock, the old John Hancock. You look at Boston now, and you will see how it's changed and developed with so many towers of buildings, fantastic buildings, and it's just the landscaping of it has changed tremendous. I think and also it changed VIA, I would say, how people respect one another and stuff like that. I think when I first came here, it was a little bit different, being from the South and coming into the environment that it presented itself at that particular time. I went through the times when even Boston, coming from a place like Birmingham, and the environment that I lived in Birmingham, where I remember when we couldn't, we had to sit in the back of the buses coming to Boston. It was different. You didn't have to do that when I was here, but yet I think that there was a lot of element of neighborhoods that were very ethnically different that I could see. A lot of, that was similar to what the neighborhoods were there in Birmingham.
When we were told at age 65 that everything would be rosy and wonderful, it ain't, honey. And I didn't want to wait until I was 65. I'm like, why can't we be wonderful now? So I started doing shows about, what are you doing? What makes you happy? What inspires you? And people started talking. And I have, I think, 900 or 1,000 of them. I think people miss a bet by putting dates and deadlines and saying, oh, well, when I get to be, why do you do that? Don't limit yourself. And I never discuss age. I don't want to know how old you are. I don't want you to mention it on the show. We are living every moment until we don't live it anymore. What's over, it's over. But if you've lived it, it's okay.
Thank you, Beth, for coming on today and sharing the Memoir Project video with us. And I want to thank you for watching Seniors Count, brought to you by Mayor Martin J. Walsh and our Commissioner, Emily Shea. You can contact us by calling 617-635-4366 or 311. You may email us at elderly@boston.gov. And as always, you can find us on Facebook. So take care, and we'll see you next time.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself.